One of the most confusing parts of growth is how much resistance shows up right when you've decided to change. You want the improvement. You believe it's good for you. You may even enjoy parts of the process. And still, your mind pushes back. That resistance isn't a failure of will. It's a feature of how the mind works. The mind's primary job is stability, not progress, not improvement, stability. It's designed to keep things predictable, even if predictable isn't ideal. So, when something starts to change, the mind doesn't ask, "Is this good?" It asks, "Is this familiar?" There's a concept called cognitive homeostasis. It means the mind works to maintain a familiar internal state. Beliefs, routines, self-image, emotional range. When those start to shift, the mind experiences it as disruption, not danger, but imbalance. And imbalance triggers resistance. Comfort bias isn't about pleasure. It's about known effort. The mind prefers familiar stress over unfamiliar calm, known difficulty over unknown ease, predictable discomfort over unpredictable outcomes. That's why growth feels uncomfortable, even when it leads to something better. The discomfort isn't proof that something is wrong. It's proof that something is different. Here's the part most people misunderstand. Resistance doesn't show up before growth. It shows up after growth begins. Once new patterns start forming, the mind detects deviation from baseline, and it responds by amplifying doubt, increasing friction, generating second thoughts, highlighting risk. This feels like self-sabotage. It's actually self-regulation. Progress changes identity. Even small improvements ask a quiet question. If this continues, who will I be? That question destabilizes the existing self-concept. So the mind pushes back, not to stop you, but to slow the rate of change. It's not trying to ruin progress. It's trying to manage transition. As you improve, awareness increases. You notice inefficiencies. You see gaps more clearly. You recognize mistakes faster. That heightened awareness feels like regression, but it's actually sensitivity. You're not getting worse. You're seeing more. And seeing more makes effort feel heavier. Most people interpret resistance as a signal to stop. They think, if this were right, it wouldn't feel this hard. If I were improving, this would feel easier. But resistance isn't a verdict. It's a respond to change. When most people feel resistance, they often respond with force. More discipline, more pressure, more self-criticism. That escalates the internal conflict. The mind doesn't need to be overpowered. It needs time to recalibrate. Growth integrates quietly through repetition, through exposure, through normalization. The mind slowly updates its baseline. What once felt disruptive becomes familiar, and when it becomes familiar, resistance fades, not because you won, but because equilibrium was restored. In long processes, resistance often peaks near transition points, right before a new identity stabilizes, right before behavior becomes default, right before unfamiliar becomes normal. So resistance increasing doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you're close. Instead of asking, why am I resisting this? A more accurate question is, what is changing that my mind is adjusting to? That shift removes blame, and when blame disappears, so does a lot of unnecessary friction. Your mind resists growth, not because you're weak or undisciplined or doing something wrong. It resists because stability matters to it. And when stability is threatened by improvement, resistance increases, not to stop you, but to slow the change long enough to adapt. If growth feels harder lately, that may not mean something is wrong. It may mean something is working. This is subtle logic.